Hi, how's it going? This is Resident of Collingwood, and I'm back to do part 8 for my read along for the Dark Shadows Daybook, written by Patrick McCray. I'm at episode 506 and page 88. Episode 506. Willie. Or did I do that already? No. Yeah, Willie pulls out the stops when he tries to halt the dream curse, while also discouraging Barnabas from shooting a man who may have died twice, Willie, John Carlin. Barnabas and Willie bicker over whether or not Adam survived the fall. Meanwhile, Carolyn confesses that she felt no danger from Adam. Willie, desperate to pass on the dream curse, scales the stones of Collingwood and breaks into Carolyn's room as he holds her fast to tell her the dream. She bites his hand to escape. 506 has so much excess stuffing it belongs on a fat man's plate at Thanksgiving in an Alka-Seltzer ad from 1974. I champion the writers. They have to stretch out more material than Reed Richards, unstable Taylor. In this case, we have 2, maybe 3 conversations that have 1 point each. Number 1, yes, Willie, I feel that Adam is still alive. 2, no, mother, somehow I sense that the large man meant me no harm. Number 3, stop squirming and let me tell you this dream. I gotta tell you this dream, Carolyn. Ouch, you bit my finger. Then move on. As is my signature, that's a wildly unfair oversimplification. Here is a fair oversimplification. Willie Loomis really is the Gilligan of Dark Shadows. First, it's an inspiring irony that they both share this first name, Willie. At least according to Sherwood Schwartz, although he spelled it with a Y, as was later established in the legendary musical Variety Special, Willie with a Y, that really comes out in this episode. Not in a cloying way, but sympathetically. Both are simple, but not simple-minded. Both have clever sets of objectives, often overlooked by those who surround them. They put up with a lot of abuse. Yes, they do. By social betters who never take the time to listen to their common sense. They have to do scut work, and they gain the sympathy of the audience, even if many of their deeds are questionable shortcuts. Like going to Maggie's house with a gun. I curse John Carlin's robust career because it kind of kept him from doing even more episodes of Dark Shadows. No matter how bluntly horrific an installment might be, there is no such thing as time wasted watching Carlin act, and watching him act the characters and dialogue he inspired the writers to craft. The character of Willie really is the rug that ties the room together. Despite being walked and sometimes turred upon, he is necessary for almost every episode, and his absence becomes apparent when you imagine any Loomisless episode with him woven in. It gets better, always. John Carlin, though, art the bacon of acting, and never the ham. The show had all of the elements, but one before he arrived. Aristocracy. Check. kind but dim-witted villagers. Check powerful threats. Check one realist to comment on it all. Speaking for the rest of us and taking literal bullets as the true audience surrogate. Eek, Willie Loomis. Because unlike Vicky, he understands all too well, maybe better than anyone else. Yes, he's a coward, but he's a cowardice that makes sense, even if it makes Willie a semi-informed expedience junkie. In this case, he keeps Barnabas, the man in charge, with a gun, no less, simming and shouting for at least the first 40 or 50 minutes of the episode. That's a feat. Then he manages to at least speak a few sentences of the dream despite having scaled a wall and wrestled a co-ed. And he does this as an inveterate smoker. I was wrong to discount episode 506. Willie climbing a wall, Barnabas with a gun, and Joan Bennett as Joan Bennett, which is worth it right there. It's a scientific impossibility to walk away from Dark Shadows without finding something to love. And I mean that. Don't let the abundance of episodes and inequally prolonged storytelling structure keep you from seeing it. Episode 525. When Roger lets slip that Vicky once was tried as a witch in 1795, Nicholas hatches a scheme to rescue Angelique with the help of black magic and hypnosis. Nicholas, Humbert Allen Alstrado. Jeff awakens from a dream where Nathan Forbes berates him as Peter Bradford upon waking. Jeff realizes that this evidence ensures that he is Peter Bradford at Collingwood. Nicholas connects to Vicky to the painting and induces Roger to explain her convictions about 1795. He realizes that she knows the location of Trask's execution tree and uses her knowledge to locate it. There, Nicholas performs a ritual to summon Angelique. The sound of screaming indicates he may be a success. Dark Shadows is a paranoid's delight and is sure to leave you with reflex and impulses that will last a lifetime, an internal gift that make a neurotic out of anyone. Vicky shows amazing fortitude and professionalism. Here she is at her first job and living at her home and work, is someone who is clearly the witch responsible for her murder. But you know, the witch says she isn't and is married to your boss, so you have to play along. Then, a sleazy guy with a mustache shows up, kisses hands, and claims to be her brother, which may be worse. One night, you come downstairs for your nightly brandy and bouillon and catch him making weird hand gestures at a painting that looks like said witch. Then he asks to borrow it for reasons that seem uncomfortable. Kentuckian who borrows a painting, someone who looks like their sister, Nicholas Blair, that's who. This kind of stuff goes in there all the time. People at Collingwood, in the name of lack of evidence, lack of witnesses, or just a desire to be darn nice, end up sleeping 3 doors down from all manner of apocalyptic near-do wells, and they just lump it. Can you trust anyone? I'm always worried when life throws me a guest star. The Collinses spend enough hours watching a show about them, and you're in serious danger of taking that home and to work. Word to the wise. 525 is a joyous little coy sample of the good stuff on the program. It's Jonathan Frid's day off, and the writers are determined to keep the suspense and ratings high. A wacky dream sequence with Nathan Forbes laughing manically is a reliable way to start any episode. Cooperative event, or Brisk Joe must be either really tired of being associated with this weirdo, or strangely proud because it's happening with a constancy that must make him think that Forbes is doing 2 sets nightly at the Blue Whale. All's well, however, because it knocks a big chunk of the Jeff Clark identity crisis out of consideration. Quickly, we move to Nicholas sleazing around Vicky and drinking it up with Roger, finally comforting him with the company of a fellow fop. You kind of wish Burt Devlin would show up and try to intimidate Roger now. Now that his buddy Nicholas is there, they just laugh at his taste in shoes, until Burke skulked away to pen an angry letter to Brewster's department store in furious shame. Roger, on cue, spills the beans about Vicky's conviction that she traveled to 1795 and was harassed by a witch hunter named Trask, tipping Nicholas off to the location of the sacrificial tree. It's easy to be a villain on Dark Shadows. It's not a job so much as a vacation. Nicholas just sits around the drawing room and drinks and leers at babes until people deliver exactly the exposition he needs. On cue. What's left? Hypnotize Vicky, go to the tree, and call back Angelique. All in a day's work. Let's praise Humphrey Allen Ostrado for carrying the show so efficiently that it feels like we're watching a talented writer unself-consciously improvise rather than some guy reciting lines and working through blocking. It's to the show's credit that they didn't simply hand over the storyline to him in perpetuity. How do you not screw up a scene? Includes Nicholas Blair. It would be enough to make the rest of the ensemble paranoid, and I guess they share the wealth with us. Episode 570. The old house becomes a full house when Barnabas tries to hide a suicidal Liz from Roger and a hypnocrazed Julia from Tom. Can he find the time to stake the town's newest vampire, Barnabas Jonathan Frid? When an insane Liz arrives at the old house, Barnabas deduces the location of both Julia and Tom Jennings. After rescuing the doctor, Barnabas returns and engages Tom in deadly combat. What to do with Julia? It had to be a constant question in the writer's room, both helped and made impossible by the fact that one of the best writers was married to her and got the job through her. She's not a love interest, but she is. She's not a heroic protagonist, but she is. She even starts out trying to kill the most popular character. Julia is a mess of contradictions. Not someone traditionally designed to be kept around, but she is. As a result, she is one of the most unique characters in the history of television. Julia defies any label you might wish to put on her, yet so many labels also apply. Willie plays Jiminy Cricket so hard in this episode, I'm surprised he doesn't turn green and sprout into... Yeah! Rather than the usual harnecking, he takes the opportunity to give Barnabas a hard time about his feelings for Julia. Barnabas is loath to admit it, but of course he cares about her. It's actually a very human moment. As he says, she has become a part of his life, a strange part. Barnabas is too polite and under too much pressure to go further. If he were to be honest, Barnabas would probably add that he would more readily admit feelings of warmth for her. If she were not also a colossal pain in the ass, she lectures him. She scolds him. She debates with him incessantly. And given the time from which Barnabas has come, he is perhaps the most liberal, advanced, forward-thinking man on the planet for putting up with it. Because that is not how they rolled in the 1790s. It's only because he had Naomi for a mother that I think he does. Freud said, behind every fear is a wish, and behind every wish is a fear. As much as Julia wanted to cure Barnabas, she was simultaneously fascinated with the concept of vampirism. Yeah, she was. It was the twilight between the world of the living and the world of the dead, and control over them that meant control over life itself. Although it was one in the chain of thousands of wrong-headed moves, I think the 2012 movie was responding to something that rumbles under the text of the TV series. Only in one moment, though, when they had Julia turn herself into a vampire, and as much as she seems to hate it from Tom, Julia is also getting a lot of what she seems to want. Above it all, she is finally desired by a handsome, virile, neck-biting man, and she hates it, but she keeps showing up. She keeps getting in the way of Barnabas's gun. She keeps tying sheets together and sneaking out of the old house after curfew, which is not easy in this episode in real life. The Collinwood set had been accidentally destroyed when it was supposed to simply be cleaned. You can imagine what it was like to be working with Dan Curtis around the time of that news. Unfortunately, they also had to deal with Joan Bennett's return, so the old house was used constantly. Here it turns into a hotel for neurotic, morbid women, making Barnabas like the unwitting hero of a Pedro Almodovar movie. No wonder he keeps going out to try to kill Tom Jennings. He's in a relatively peaceful task. It's a relatively peaceful task compared to what he's dealing with at home. Liz wants to die. Roger wants Barnabas to get Julia to pull strings at Wincliffe. Julia wants to run so far away from Tom Jennings that she circumnavigates the globe and runs into him again by accident. Victoria's still missing. Adam is at large. God only knows what's going on with Angelique. He's got Marie Wallace body decomposing in the basement. Nicholas is having feudal fondue with Maggie. In the middle of all this, Willie stands there and has the nerve to call Barnabas insensitive. I'm amazed that Barnabas doesn't take the hammer and stake to him first, just as a warm-up. No, a little bit of time spent staking the walking representation of everything you hate about yourself is just what the doctor ordered, and it's just what Barnabas gets. Dealing with Julia Hoffman is a complex matter. You've got to work out that stress somewhere. That's good. I agree with that. He stakes Tom Jennings. That's what he said. Um, episode. It was played by the late Donald Briscoe, by the way, if you guys don't know. Episode 593. It's a serious ending move and a gesture that defines him. Barnabas is going to spill it. The whole Mugla, it's a bold choice for both the character and the writers. I mean, where to from there? Dark Shadows returns again and again to the well of responsibility. Characters are either trying to make responsibility like Liz bringing home Vicky, or they're having responsibility cursed upon them like Barnabas' entire relationship with Angelique. But with so many secrets in the shadows, truth is almost always suicide. Literally with Angelique in 1840. Of course, in the name of ratings, you can't be allowed to do it. We know this. And when the allegedly dead Carolyn answers the door of Collinwood, the only one surprised is Barnabas. It's a beautiful shot, and it gives nuance to our introduction to him from over a year before, when he steals himself at the door and then knocks. It's incredibly reminiscent of the knock that introduces him to Mrs. Johnson. Now we see the stakes. Now we see the nervousness. It's what we miss thanks to selective camera work. In the introductory episode, it made me wonder if he were on the cusp of simply confessing all back then too. Is he always on that verge? The majority of Dark Shadows shows Barnabas as a deeply moral man. It just happens to be informed by a bizarre, real politic, anachronistic, and aristocratic compass. Taking responsibility for the wrongdoing is a universal part of almost every ethos. Everything just get in the way in his introduction. He can't and won't. He's in survival mode. And it looks like he's lost his lost love, and the reason he wound up in this mess in the first place is waiting for him. Then he either acts to feed himself or acts against those who intend to harm him, like Dave Woodard. I'm not saying he's a saint, but there's a reason that they wrote in Angelique, Trask, and Nicholas Blair. Barnabas, the son of a business tycoon, and someone I easily surmise is a chess player, understands strategy and value. His truths are priceless commodities and also volatile ones. Yes, someone sanctimoniously simple, like the eventual incarnation of Willie Loomis, Collinwood's most jittery Hesra, might want him to do it all the time. But under most circumstances, fessing up would do more harm than good. But you can only dodge that bill for so long. And the writers have created a magnificent vice from which the only escape, fantastic as it seems, is honesty. Yes, Liz and Roger would tell him he was barking mad, even if an incensed Maggie corroborating his confession, until a bulletproof, fireproof Adam burst in as a one-man wrecking crew capable of not just of killing them, but killing an entire house as well. I don't quite know what Adam would do, only that everyone who looked at the semi-liquid remains of Collinwood afterwards would say it were dead. Only Professor Stokes knows of the powers and limits of Adam's digestive tract, but if it were implode in the field of architectural demolition, The possibilities and beyond are beyond the diabolical. The writers certainly have it more than both ways with Carolyn's reappearance. Barnabas spiritually gets to be the guy who tells the truth, and he gets spared the consequence of doing so. For the observant, Barnabas has rounded a corner. Honesty and consequences are not just idle oppositions. I'm not skipping my page. Idle oppositions. He's acted upon them. No one of his great struggles has gone from reasoning why he should be honest about his curse to why he should not. It's a surprisingly dark question. Protecting others can be a nastier business than the guardians of goodness and honor sometimes admit. Sometimes it takes a Barnabas to defend a Vicky. One of the dilemma-lit alleys that branches off of the hero's journey suggests that this kind of truth would be the ultimate thing that Vicky would just not understand. Maybe Aaron Sorkin was right in A Few Good Men. But even if Vicky is of the world, can't handle the truth, is a giant step for Barnabas to be willing to unleash it. Sometimes it's even more heroic if he doesn't. Good and evil isn't always black and white, which is one more theme of Dark Shadows. Episode 600. Barnabas learns that the unknown taste of garlic, when he allows a dead Frenchman to enter his body, Eve Marie Wallace. Eve grows restless at her attempt to seduce Nicholas, fails when he instructs her to stay with Adam or be destroyed. Meanwhile, Stokes deduces that the ghost haunting the area is Philip Corridor. A man who chronicled the French Revolution. Corridor confirms that this by poisoning Barnabas as a seance. He was the former lover of Daniel Roget and intends to punish those who opposed him elsewhere. Spectral hands choke Adam, and Barnabas suffers as well. The Gold Key comics are bizarre, European supernatural stories that have something vaguely to do with Dark Shadows. Episode 600 is the Gold Key comics version come to life. I keep looking for the Mummy, the Electricity Dragon, and the Revolutionary Soldier. Episode 600 is no small accomplishment. And if it just so happens to come some extra trills and glassness, well, it's no surprise. This is one of my fondest periods of the show. And 600 emphasizes why. Because the driving arcs and interconnected characters and storylines are what give Dark Shadows its dramatic heft. There's something dangerously goofy about the latter part of Adam, Nicholas, Eve, and Angelique era. It has no real relevance to the larger story, marking itself contained, non-sequential. Most of the other storylines connect with the past or future of Collingwood and reveal important elements of the family and key characters. But once Barnabas sits down at a seance to contact the destructive and departed French lover of the ghost of the woman whose life force was used to spark the reconstructed body of a lady intended to be the mother of a new master race for the Dark Lord, the series is off the chain. This is a show where Barnabas solves new paranormal whodunits every week. It's no longer Dark Shadows, it's Saturday morning's new adventures of Barnabas and friends. I'm amazed that they don't cut away to an unrelated sequences where Barnabas, Julia, Stokes, and Willie have a rock band and sing about bike safety. They throw story continually the occasional bone. Nicholas must keep Barnabas alive to protect Adam, but that's it. And the nutty part is that removes Barnabas from danger and nerfs a major element of the tension. Somehow it's a nerfing that happens in the best way. In Monster of the Week shows, we want heroes to be inconvenienced more than threatened. And there are a few things more inconvenient than being inhabited by a Frenchman's ghost or an seance. Marie Wallace continues to let the DS universe know that she's here to stay at least for the next 15 or 16 months. Marie and Eve are both very different presences in DS. The idea of physicality imposing beauty is the most Dan Curtis idea that Uncle Dan had never deployed, and her gradually intense acting choices match his zesty sense of storytelling. Eve has every reason to be DS' most openly sexual character, an alien from another dimension of life she was literally created to mate. With Eve, Dark Shadows rationalized how to be erotic without apologies. Erotic Without Apologies is the title of Professor Stokes' memoir, coincidentally. Her most amusingly manipulative moment in 1600 comes when she knows convention about women being the helpless puppets of men. Yeah, sure, but she believes it will work, and it's a nice try. Eve may be one of the DS' most revolutionary characters. The rest all follow vague molds. Eve is wholly original. There's an agenda, and yet it's a private one, of course. She's the bride of Frankenstein, and she benefits from the fact that the bride does nothing after coming to life but hissing, screaming, and being blown up. And even a Gold Key comic would give the brides a tad more to do, and probably black stockings to do it in. Episode 605. Stokes reunites his old crew to conduct one last caper to rob Eve of oxygen. Can they pull it off, or does Nicholas Blair have the upper hand? Stokes, Thayer David. Julia dreams that Barnabas' mission to Blair House will end in death. He's incredulous at this news, but they recruit Stokes anyway. Stokes visits Blair to gather intelligence and make a schematic, having located Eve's room by its aroma. Back at the old house, he schemes to invite Nicholas for dinner and bore him with stories as Barnabas sneaks over and drugs Eve. Unfortunately, Nicholas has seen the entire plan sketched via his scaring mirror. The plan works until Barnabas discovers that Angelique waits in the wings. The unwittiest assumption about Dark Shadows episodes is that they're all alike. After all, out of the fighting 1,225, how many can there be that different? The answer is quite a few. Yes, there's a lot of filler. Yes, Sturgeon's law dictates that only 10% of episodes are any good. That's 125, not much. If we apply that measure informally, it means that there are only 2 good episodes of Buffy per year, 14 in all. 64 Simpsons episodes, which is not bad by any means. But you have to be 60 minutes to beat Dark DS. And how many 60 minutes festivals have you been to? Exactly. Although the Ed Begley errands on Etsy rival the Barnabas rings, when I think of the very best of Dark Shadows, There is a surpassing variety nested within the particularly luminous gem, and of all things, it's a caper story. There are two types of stories out there: all plot or all style. Thanks to the urban wit of Gordon Russell, we get a beautiful blend of both with a classic DS punchline. I love it when a plan comes together. Straight from the A-Team. And before it does, the episode apparently assumes the form of the Barnabas Julia Dark Shadows sitcom, where the only thing missing is a laugh track. Barnabas is on his way to Nicholas when Julia stops him. For weeks she does nothing but harangue him to get off his caboose and be a man. And now that he does it, she stops him before you can say, "That's our Julia." She gives her reasoning. She had a scary dream. Jonathan Frid nails his "you gotta be kidding me" skull, and I completely expect him to look at the camera and proclaim, "As always, the doctor is out." You may think I'm exaggerating. Watch the episode and get back to me. No, Jonathan, real quick. Jonathan and her are having this conversation, and yeah, she's like, "Aren't you going to do?" She's sort of like, "Aren't you going to do anything?" And he's right. By the time he gets up and wants to, she is stopping him. So it's almost like you're expecting him to like, really? He is right. That's really good. Oh, goodness. I lost my place. Give me a second, guys. Back to. The show was finding a real rhythm between these newer characters, and rather than lose steam upon declaring peace, they take off like a rocket. When fans reminisce about the overabundant, cheerful self-appreciation of Professor Stokes, 605 is what we're talking about. After we've gotten used to Barnabas and Julia being polar opposites in this battle, Stokes comes in and unites them with a plan while making them look utterly rational. Characters on Dark Shadows spend most of their time bewildered, frightened, or in denial, setting Stokes up as the show's most memorable hero as he reveals in a carnival of confidence. Whether it's pulling out a hand sketch schematics of Blair's house, identifying rooms by their owner's scent, finding Nicholas depressingly over-curated before torturing him with Colin's miniature rather than Willie's cooking. Stokes makes the scene. That's even a subtle homage to Ocean's 11, the camera hovering unusually high as team this old house plans their wacky assassination attempt, plotted around a fancy card table that Willie, I'm sure, set up in the drawing room, just for that image. It's nothing but enduring joy. And if the scene ended with Stokes, then Julia, then Barnabas with Ring, putting their hands down in a stack on a table, I would have been satisfied on a disturbingly cosmic level. Yeehaw 11. The only thing better than the planning is the execution. Julia is petrified. Stokes is revealing in the scheme. In the scheme. And Barnabas is only barely keeping the dishonesty cogent. Now, of all times, he becomes a troubled bluffer. Well, if you're used to having the luxury of 171 years of claustrophobic imprisonment to cook up a good whopper, it might sting to suddenly have but a few hours to get your lines down. Of course, the laid joke is that Nicholas is completely aware of the scene. Since he steams the show on a mirror at home, as smart as they are, Nicholas is just indulging them, making him a gamesman on par with the professor. It's just a shame he doesn't know it. Think how much faster Dark Shadows would go by if everyone on it watched Dark Shadows. Nicholas clearly does. Given how far ahead he is, Nicholas could have stopped this stock park at any point, letting Barnabas wander into the ridiculous trap consisting of pillars piled upon under a sheet and Angelique hiding in the corner. That's not just winning, that's an additional "take that, Professor." That's an editorial. "Take that, Professor." Episode 606. Angelique puts the bite on Barnabas, but will she turn him into one of the undead before Nicholas escapes from Stokes' trap? Angelique, Laura Parker. Barnabas, weakened by Angelique's bite, is horrified to see that Nicholas has revived her as a vampire. What's worse is Barnabas is now her slave. Meanwhile, Stokes and Julia are unsuccessfully at detaining Nicholas further, with petty social niceties, and the demon departs dinner. When Nicholas returns, he recommends Angelique to demur from summoning Barnabas and to only do so when he wills it. At the old house, Barnabas returns with blood loss. He reports nothing of Angelique and says that he could find neither Adam nor Eve. When Stokes and Julia leave, Angelique appears and, despite her orders, bites Barnabas anyway. Stokes visits Blair to gather intelligence and make a scheme, having located Eve's... I've never heard of that. That's to Stokes. Okay, I see where I did. I'm on page 97. I already read it. Sorry, guys. I almost reread what I already read. Go through your Shadowsiana. Look for defining images. I'll wager that two come from this episode. One is Stokes as he sees off Nicholas. It's a close-up, and Stokes, that big Maine cone, looks like he's absolutely swallowed Nicholas Blair's canary. It is a Stokes in full, and that's full indeed. The second image is a bit biting and ailing Barnabas sitting in a chair at Blair House among antiques and blue-green lighting. Angelique is in the unforgettable white dress, is at his side to see it out of context, maybe to see the truth of it. He is Corona wickedly wounded, and there she is at his side, impossibly large eyes brimming with concern and unending support. Is it the most romantic image in Dark Shadows? Maybe. Of course, Angelique is also the cause of his misery of it. She benefits from it, all of it. He would get the hell away if he could. He would get the hell away if he could. She is more than happy that he cannot. Eternally combatants. Of course they belong together as a series true lovers. In the causing Barnabas Agisto department, Julia is the third billed act at Amateur Night in Dixie compared to Angelique. Certain marriages, in my observation, often last out of respect for the art of war, not love. Divorce would give too much satisfaction. The secret to this cursed unions is utter contempt. Never is it more lovingly illustrated than here in this image. The dichotomy of pleasure, pain, and a shared curse that comes around and goes around is just too perfect. The image is the yin and yang of Dark Shadows, and this episode is the perfect frame of it. It's the birthday of the nurse from episode 235 and 236. Frances Helm, profiled elsewhere in the Daybook. She is best known to me as one of the actresses who played Rachel Brown in the original Broadway of The Great American Inherit the Wind. And less happy news today marks the passing of Angus Cairns, an actor with a robust Broadway background on Dark Shadows. He succeeded Greek god and played part Dana Elker as Sheriff George Patterson. On this day in 1967, the world got its first live Broadway by our astronauts in orbit, care of Apollo 7. It was simple but miserable mission. Commander Wiley Shkera, that cranky swabo, had a cold, later cited in his certificate ads, and complained bitterly to Deke Slayton about nearly everything he was asked to do. By the end of the mission, Shkera even refused to wear his helmet for re-entry. He had already announced his retirement, but his crew was just beginning in space and ending. None of them ever flew on NASA missions again. It is said not for ritual. Episode 623. What happens when a witch sends a reanimated superwoman back in time to inhabit the body of the 1700s murderers who provided her the spark of life, anything and more? Ben Stokes, there, David. In exchange for distracting Nicholas, Angelique sends Eve back in time to 1795. There she visits her old lover, Peter Bradford, who awaits execution for killing some guy. But he's innocent because he's Peter Bradford. She offers to help him escape, but he refuses. Her plan is to gather evidence to convince Jeff Clark that he's really Peter Bradford. Meanwhile, Joshua orders Ben Stokes to destroy Vicky's book of Colin's history. Eve gets wind of this and hoodwinks Ben into giving it up. Ultimately, she is unsuccessful in rescuing Peter, but she does get a note that he writes minutes before his execution, and she proclaims it to be exactly what she needs. This is the kind of thing you could only get away with while the boss is in Tahiti, and yet I have no evidence that Dan was in Tahiti. In fact, I could just as easily see him giggling like a demented toddler at the audacity of what the show was doing. Less than a year before, when 1795 began, I am sure there was a mixture of excitement and "we're doomed" at the ABC offices. Now, what the hell? Let's throw a 1960 soap back to 1795 for a day. Why not? Better yet, why the answer was simple. Sweeps. It's when the Nelson ratings were examining the books. Look at November, February, and May, and you'll find the shows doing things at their wackiest. In fact, around this time, 1795 was beginning for the 1967 year. They were doing another 1795 flashback in 1968, with another one coming in December of 1969, was introducing the Leviathans, and in 1970 the events leading to Quentin's witchcraft trial was becoming to a severed head in a box. The episode itself is the kind of nutty, absurd fun which would have been Gordon Russell's signature if it had fit on a check. So often his scripts feel like parodies of Dark Shadows. that won't quite come out and admit it. First, the patient lunacy of Peter Bradford being the end-all to be-all for both Vicky and bafflingly the most evil woman on earth, Danielle Roget in Collinsport, from France, by the way, of the Yancey Street Gang. What was the attraction? Who throws a shoe, honestly? If he has a shot with these girls, I do too, and my dance card's open. Female Dark Shadows fans. Then Joshua gets so upset over his inability to avert Peter's death that he orders a valuable book from the future to be burned. I guess it was cathartic. Daniel Cordric, I think is what the words. Daniel even tries to seduce the elderly ghoul guard, who just seems weirded out by the whole thing, as if she was an whole unwholesome fetish with which he wants no part. It's an unofficial sequel to 1795 that makes me wish they'd check back more frequently, of course. Jeb Hawks would also be anchored back here, making 1795 the Queen Mother of the Juniper Hinges. On this day in 1968, Richard Nixon defeated Washington Beefcake and Ensign Heartthrob Hubert Humphrey to become the 37th President of the United States. In many ways, his administrations would satisfy conspicuous number of left-wing initiatives for a Republican. If you want a smoking conspiracy gun, it's that. Okay, guys, I'm going to stop there. Here's where I'll be when I pick up next. I'll be episode 627, page 100. Wow, guys, I'm on page 100. Cool. I'm going to stop there. I'm actually going to put that there so I know where I'm picking up from. I hope you guys are enjoying the read along. Guys, link to where you can get the Dark Shadows Daybook written by Patrick McCray, artwork by Wallace McBride. Obviously, is going to be a link in the description box. I'm really enjoying this. I really am, guys. You guys got to go check out this book. You guys definitely got to go pick it up. If you're a Dark Shadows fan, this right here so far, what I've read, what I've showed you, it's a must-own. And it's a must-read. I really am enjoying the hell out of this. Again, link's going to be in the description box. Hope you guys have a great day. I will be doing more read-alongs tomorrow. So I'll see you guys. Well, I'll see you guys tonight for me and Mark's video. But I'll see you guys later tonight. Bye.